G'day ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Draw with Jazza. I'm Jazza, and this video is a bit of a photo manipulation tutorial, which I actually realise I haven't done very much of in the past or so far, so I'm pretty excited to get stuck into this one. Now, I'm going to anchor the theme of this photo manipulation video tutorial on the Scorch Trials movie, which I saw recently on a flight, and I really loved the way that they made the apocalyptic setting really sort of sand duney and futuristic, desolate and decimated, but of course with the foundation of modernity and our own city buildings and cityscapes and all this stuff. So today I'm taking this image that you can see on the screen and I'm going to manipulate it. Now, because of the magic of video editing, I will have finished the final manipulation by the time I'm editing this, and I can show you right now what it will turn into. I, of course, haven't made it yet, but, you know, hopefully, judging by what you see, it was a success. So today I'm going to take you through the steps that I took to create this scorched apocalyptic image, and you can, of course, use these steps in this tutorial to create your own scorched images, or, of course, to create images of your own other apocalyptic worlds, whether it be zombie apocalypse or sci-fi or anything in between. And the first most important thing, of course, is a base image to work with. This is mine. It's of a harbour in Hobart, in sort of the little islandy bit off of Australia. And one of the reasons I decided to make a video of editing this image is because it presents with it a lot of challenges. To create a scorched environment image of this piece, I need to remove the water, I need to move the boats, I need to change the sky, I need to kill and get rid of the trees. So there's actually quite a lot I need to do, and it's going to be quite a lot of work to turn this image into something that looks completely different but convincing as an apocalyptic image. So it should be good fun. Let's get stuck into it. To start off with, you're going to want to change the color base of the image. To do this, use appropriate layer styles such as color, multiply, or overlay, and adjust the color tone of your image by putting the base of that rough sort of color you're looking for into it and applying those layer styles. Then what I like to do is actually duplicate the result of these layers and flatten them. Do keep in mind that as you manipulate an image and make lots of changes, you may want to revert back to stages you were previously at. So what I like to do is get into the practice of commonly duplicating something I've finished and I'm happy with, and merging them and flattening them into one layer so I can go back to my previous layers if I need to. Otherwise, I have a flat image of what I have to work with moving forward. We start off with the major image edits first, the elements that need removing and repainting or patching the gaps that are left over. So in this image, of course, the main areas, and there are quite a few of them, are the water, the boats, which will need moving, the trees, and the sky. Buildings and the details and all the intricate little stuff can be left for later. To start off with, I lasso select the boats and I copy and paste them onto a new layer of their own so that I have them to come back to. And I also clean up the outlines of the boats on their own layer so I can move them and place them elsewhere without carrying the surrounding imagery with them. Then I break down the image to its bare necessities and I completely get rid of the sky and the water, mainly because obviously there's going to be no water in a scorched environment, and of course because the sky is a little bit too pretty and too normal, and I want to add something a little more desolate and have the freedom to manipulate the color when I need to later. Then I have my core background image, the horizon with the buildings to work with, and I want to remove the boats and fill in the gaps. Now, there are several ways you can remove elements of your images and details. One is to use the content aware fill, and this can be done by selecting the area you want to remove and then right clicking and selecting fill, as if you wanted to fill it with a blank color or something, but instead in the fill options select content aware from the drop down menu, which is just below foreground and background color. Another similar way to replace or remove areas of your image is to use the spot healing brush tool, and that's where you paint over certain details that you want removed, and Photoshop will do its best to remove them. Now, the thing to remember about both of these options is they're not magic. You got to work in smaller chunks or in areas that are surrounded by very clear geometry or tones for it to work best. You can't just select a huge chunk of an image and then use the spot heal brush or the content aware fill and expect it to magically disappear. Often it will look really warped or weird, and it may not even work all the time on areas that you think would be simple. So it's not the be all end all answer to image manipulation. In those circumstances, another useful method is to find aspects of the image that are repetitive and continue behind the object you want removed. So for example, in this case, there's obviously some sort of a docking area behind the boats, and I find an area of this that can be repeated and paste this along, and that ends up being quite a staple method of removing the boats entirely in the image. And then finally, when none of that is really applicable, there's manual painting. Now, this isn't always the most perfect option because it can take a lot of time and effort to exactly mimic the look or the building or whatever you're replacing, but you don't need to make it perfect from the very start. You'll just want to block it out with the basic colors and tones that are going to continue and replace whatever's in front of it that you want to get rid of. And it's important to keep in mind to use flawed brushes. You don't want to use smooth brushes, or in particular, in my opinion, the default Photoshop brushes. So use some custom brushes if you have them available, things that have some good texture to them. As you can see with the panel on the left, I have a whole bunch of brushes that I personally made and use all the time, and I like to do this sort of painting with my oil brushes. So if you're interested, you can check out my custom brushes on my website at JAZZA'Studios.com. I'll link to it on the screen and in the description. Now, of course, there are large areas of texture or detail or visual elements I've removed and need to put something in. For example, the sky or what once was the water, and there needs to be something there because at the moment it's completely empty. So to do this, you're going to need to bring in other images that work well and then manipulate them. Google Images is your friend. So bring in the core elements, in this case the sky or the walls of the dock or the dry riverbed, and adjust and manipulate them to fit your needs. I also like to paint on a layer above with an overlay or a multiply layer style, and this can help add ambient occlusion or can be used to tweak the colors to fit the setting. Because most of the time when you place an image from Google Images into your image, it won't fit very well. So you'll have to play around with it a bit and do some manipulation until it works. Another thing you can do is bring in props. So for example, I brought in this boat to add some depth and visual interest to an area of the image that would otherwise be pretty empty. When I got rid of the water, it got rid of a lot of reflections and a lot of visual interest, and it ended up being very bland and empty with just the riverbed. So I added in a sunken boat, and then of course I took the other boats that were there and repositioned them. And from there, I started to manually paint the sand using my textured oil brush and the details brush, once again part of my JAZZA'S Photoshop brush set. And it's important to remember when painting and adding organic elements, which in this case is sand, to paint imperfectly. Use asymmetry, add pockets of shadows and highlights, and try not to be too neat about it. You do want to follow some sort of a formula, but at the end of the day, these are elements that are random and sporadically placed around by the wind and by chaotic elements around them. So you don't want it to look too neat and orderly. Try and loosen up and paint in an organic way, and try and approach it as if it's all unraveling before you, rather than having something intentional. Let it all sort of unfold as you work on the image. I painted the sand on its own layer and added clipping mask layers in Photoshop so I could do the shading without worrying about going over the lines. And this is a really useful thing to use from time to time. And I also do this so that later on I can add things like sand textures and add overlays from Google Images, and then have them apply only to those sand areas that I painted and not to the entire image. To make a clipping mask, you simply Alt and click the line dividing two layers in Photoshop, and the topmost layer will only show elements inside whatever is solid on the base clipping mask layer underneath. Once you're happy with the overall layout and composition of your piece, you can add in the details and finishing touches. And you can do this in a couple of ways. One is to manually paint the features, and in this case, things like removing chunks of buildings and then painting in their exposed skeletons and broken walls and buildings, etc. And then another way is to bring in other images and textures to overlay and kind of integrate into and manipulate with. And in this case, this is things like adding cracked areas to walls or grungy elements to buildings, and just isolating them and applying them to the areas that are most applicable or appropriate. And then adding the final touches includes things like painting on visual effects. So for example, in this image, I painted a light sort of sand breeze that comes off of some of these objects and buildings, and painted some sand on the top of the buildings. And this helps make it feel like that there's a desolate, dry wind blowing over the atmosphere. And then another thing I do at the very end of an image manipulation is to slightly darken the outside edges of the image and prominent shadows with the burn tool. And then I also use the dodge tool to bring out highlights and reflective areas and make it look a little more dynamic. And you can do this and play around with it, but once again, use that technique of duplicating, merging, and having duplicates as you work, so that if the dodging and burning you do is something you're not happy with, you can revert to your original undodged, unburned image later on, just in case it all goes terribly wrong. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. I hope this video has been interesting or educational for you and will be helpful for you in creating your own scorched or apocalyptic images. And of course, if you want some inspiration or ideas on what the future scorched apocalypse might look like, then of course there's the Scorch Trials movie, which has recently come out, which you can check out. And of course, if you happen to decide to play around with this and create a scorched apocalyptic image, I'd love to see it. So make sure to tag me on Twitter and show me the before and after, and I can't wait to see what you guys come up with. That's it for now, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to my channel to see new content every week. Check out more of my stuff by clicking the annotations over there. If you want to support my work and get a few goodies for yourself, head over to my store for archives, ebooks, and get yourself something nice. If you're looking for a great place to collaborate, explore, or share your own content, head over to newgrounds.com. That's it for now, and until next time, see you later.